The winds increasingly freshen. There will still be some sunny spells on offer, particularly across the eastern areas. The Midlands will see sunny skies turn increasingly hazy as we move into the afternoon. Despite the increase in cloud, it will remain dry, with temperatures climbing into the high teens. Moving into northern England, and it will also be dry there, but the cloud will be in on the increase, especially in the west. Winds will also be strengthening here, especially over the Pennines. Up into Scotland, and it's a very different story here, with a band of wet and windy weather moving across the country. Feeling much cooler here too, much more than yesterday. The wet weather will also be affecting Northern Ireland this lunchtime, with the raining turning heavy at times. Combined with strengthening winds, it will also be feeling pretty miserable here. The rain will be slowly tracking back south-eastwards throughout the rest of Monday, although much of the south is staying dry until after dark. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Moroki on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, we're with you. We're with you until midday, covering everything from Beergate leaks and leadership crises to the shocking election result in Northern Ireland. I am currently wearing one shoe at the moment. That's what.
Oh, OK, all right, no one needs to know that. I actually haven't got pants on. Anyway, right, we'll be talking to the architect of universal credit as well about the cost of living crisis. Then we're crossing over to a former Afghan MP to discuss the Taliban's enforcement of the burqa. And yes, I am going to be getting stuck into Starmer. He's got to go. Don't go anywhere.
Yes, well, make sure you get in touch with your views. As usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email. We'll get to those very shortly. But first, the latest news with Rosie.
A very good morning. It's 10 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Russia's president claims the West was preparing to invade his land, and that's why he chose to invade Ukraine. Vladimir Putin made the comments as Moscow's holding its annual military parade today to celebrate victory in World War II. Speaking this morning, the UK's Defence Secretary Ben Wallace says Putin's actions in Ukraine are mirroring that of the Nazis.
Putin, his inner circle and his generals are now mirroring fascism and tyranny of 77 years ago, repeating the errors of the last century's totalitarian regimes. They are showing the same disregard for human lives, national sovereignty and the rules-based international system.
In an overnight address, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine will do everything to end the war.
Just yesterday in the Luhansk region, 60 people were killed by a Russian bomb. Peaceful people. They were hiding from shelling in the building of a regular school which was attacked by Russian airstrikes. To do so is to imitate precisely the evil that the Nazis brought to Europe. We must do everything we can to end the war as soon as possible with the victory of freedom. For the longer the war, the greater the benefits of tyranny and the greater the loss of freedom.
The Northern Ireland Secretary Brandon Lewis will meet party leaders at Stormont later today to press for the return of devolved government. It follows Sinn Féin's historic result in the Assembly elections at the end of last week, which saw them secure 27 seats and the DUP win 25. Labour's Shadow Health Secretary says Sir Keir Starmer is not ducking scrutiny by pulling out of an event later today. Wes Streeting defended the Labour leader against what he described as Tory mudslinging. It says Durham police are investigating allegations that Keir Starmer broke COVID rules in April of last year. Labour have denied any rules were broken and have not said why the leader has pulled out of today's speech. Universities Minister Michelle Donnellan told GBNews she thinks Sir Keir Starmer's actions are hypocritical.
What's coming up in my own constituency is a sense of disappointment with the sheer hypocrisy that has happened and come about in terms of Keir Starmer's approach, having known deep down that there was more to this curry evening than initially we thought. You know, it does smack of sheer hypocrisy, and I can understand why my constituents are very concerned about that.
Polling expert Sir John Curtis told GB News there's mounting pressure on not only Labour, but also the Prime Minister over potential broken lockdown rules.
I mean, should it emerge that Sir Keir, in the judgment of the police, did break the rules and as a result he resigns, the pressure on the Prime Minister to resign, particularly if he were to receive another fine, would of course be very substantial. So in a sense, yes, this for the time being put the pressure on the Labour Party and probably has caused Sir Keir not to make a speech today, but actually this could still rebound on the government if actually the judgment of the police were to be adverse for Sir Keir.
The boss of Scottish Power says more needs to be done to lower energy bills ahead of winter, as prices are predicted to go up again. Keith Anderson has urged the government to take action, adding that bills are due to rise by almost £1,000 for millions of households by next winter. Schools in England will be required to publish an attendance policy under new government plans. There's also going to be compulsory registers for children who aren't in classrooms, so authorities can better identify children missing out on full-time education. The Prime Minister says the new legislation and reforming school funding will create a system that works for every child. Britain's town centres are to be given a new lease of life, with derelict shop fronts to be transformed. The idea is to help restore neighbourhood pride. The plans are going to be announced in the Queen's speech during the state opening of Parliament tomorrow. The Prime Minister says the plans give councils extra powers to force landlords to rent out empty shops. You're up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
A very good morning to you all at home. Good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's on your TV, radio and online. It's just gone 10:05 and we've got a great show lined up for you to kickstart your Monday. So here's what's on the menu. OK, well, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer is facing growing pressure after a memo leaked over the weekend revealed the so-called Beergate gathering was, in fact, planned in advance. Starmer has repeatedly called for the PM to resign over Partygate. So, if he's fined, will Sir Keir take his own advice and quit? We've got a poll on that right now on Twitter, by the way, at GB News. Will Keir go if he's broken the rules? Yeah, very sticky situation he's got himself in now. Keeping with politics for the moment, it's the first time in Northern Ireland's 101-year history that a nationalist party has been the largest at Stormont. In terms of seats, we'll get stuck into that later in the show. And what could it mean for tensions on the border, of course, following everything that happened with Brexit? Yeah, indeed. Yes, and we'll be joined again by To The Point's man of the hour. It's Nathan
Nathan Dunn. You remember Nathan Dunn, don't you? He's doing amazing work for male mental health, and he's walking from John O'Groats to Land's End barefoot, OK? He's going to set a world record in the process. We're trying to raise a bit of money for him as well. Just quickly, a cheeky little link for you, justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christie's. We're over 7K. Let's get to 10K by the end of the week.
And I think he said last week to us he's an average of 26 miles an hour or something.
Miles an hour, that would be a record. That would be a world record.
6 miles a day, that's the average he has to walk to actually finish that.
Yeah.
So good luck to him. We'll have him live a bit later.
We will. Yes, absolutely. Well, we've got all of that coming up. Much more across the programme. Get in touch, as always, GBViews, gbnews.uk.
Yes, but first, Patrick gives his views on Sir Keir Starmer and that beer he had.
Keir Starmer is surely a dead man walking. His days are numbered. There are more damning revelations about Beergate that have probably signed his political death warrant. Of course, he's done this all to himself. If Keir Starmer hadn't made such a big deal out of Partygate and called for Boris Johnson to resign and Rishi Sunak for being slapped with a fixed penalty notice, then I don't think anyone would seriously be calling for him to stand down now. So, in a way, like many of his voters, he's decided life would be much easier if he was unemployed. Here are the latest nails in Sir Keir's coffin, and thankfully it comes in the form of a blow-by-blow schedule of events that prove the Durham sesh was pre-planned. Firstly, Labour officials always knew that Angela Rayner was in attendance. She'd referred to in the memo as AR, so it wasn't an honest mistake that Keir Starmer and Labour denied that she was there. It looks a lot like an absolutely massive lie. Secondly, actual police officers could be key witnesses. So 4 close protection officers are named in this document, including one who travelled with him from Hull to Durham. Thirdly, the order of events quite clearly shows that Sir Keir could have eaten at his hotel on his own, and there was no need for a massive curry and a boatload of booze. In fact, and this is the real kicker, OK, the curry and beer was pre-arranged. The running order states, quote, dinner in Miners Hall with Mary Foy. I mean, I think I'd have sent my ticket back personally. But anyway, that's a pre-arranged dinner, isn't it? 80 minutes was set aside for the meal, hardly the pause that Sir Keir tried to claim. But of course, this was just a quick nibble to eat, wasn't it? Between work events, wasn't it, Keir? Is that right? Well, it turns out that looks like a lie as well. Because, according to the order of events, there was no work scheduled to take place after the meal. I now, for once, am on the side of Diane Abbott. She says that Sir Keir should resign if he's handed a fixed penalty notice. Let's not beat around the bush here. A woman who can't even put her own shoes on or do basic maths can see that Keir should stand down. It's hard to see how he won't be given a fixed penalty notice. I mean, compare travelling to Durham for a pre-arranged meal and booze up with someone presenting you with a bit of cake in your own office. Literally, the only thing Sir Keir had going for him before this was that he was a man of integrity, that he was honest. Well, he isn't, is he? And all this talk of him being forensic, well, he's hardly been forensic when it comes to the emails in his inbox that prove he is, in my opinion, a disingenuous little charlatan. He's so boring that he could bring a tear to a glass eye. I actually feel sorry for his close protection officer because he had to travel a couple of hours on a train with him. I think I'd stick my head out of the window and hope to hit a low-hanging branch. So, of course, it's quite ironic, isn't it, that it'll probably be an actual party that brings Keir down. But this is just terrible politics. He's shown that he may well be a half-decent barrister, although, to be fair, I think there's probably a few women who encountered a certain BBC celebrity who might disagree with that. But he's terrible at politics. He's backed himself into a corner. If he receives a fixed penalty notice, he has to resign. He set the rules himself. The question is, will he?
Wow, very robust for a Monday morning.
I think, yeah.
I think for me, what makes me laugh in all of this is that Sir Keir Starmer actually wanted Boris Johnson to resign, not when he'd been issued with a fixed penalty notice, but when he was having the investigation into whether he broke lockdown rules. So by Keir Starmer's logic, the police, we shouldn't even wait to see if he is guilty, so to speak. He should resign now because that's what he called for Boris to do as soon as he was accused of doing this.
I wonder whether or not he's going to go and stand at the dispatch box and go, well, I'm not going to quit because our Prime Minister's not going to quit. Well, that's not...
I'll quit if you quit.
I'll quit if you quit. Can you imagine if Boris goes, all right, then I'll quit. Keir quits. Boris like, nah, mate, you're all right. But no, I think he's massively backed himself into a corner. It's very difficult for me to see now how he doesn't get served with a fixed penalty notice.
Yes, I mean, that would raise a lot of questions, I think. And also, it would surely mean he would have to resign because he has positioned himself, as you were saying, as this man of honesty and integrity, and he's sort of distinguished himself from Boris Johnson in that way. And if he comes out with this and it comes out that maybe he did bend the truth and he gets served with one and then he doesn't resign, that's going to go down the toilet, that good boy image.
Well, just before we get to our guest, just very quickly, ladies and gentlemen, we have got a poll on this right now. You can get in touch as well, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Do you think Sir Keir will resign if he does get served with a fixed penalty notice? I find it hard to see how he won't, but there we go, yes.
I find it hard to see who might replace him, given the calibre of that front bench and probably the other front bench as well. But anyway, we're joined now by David Maddox, political editor of The Express Online. Good morning, David. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning,
Keir Starmer's got himself into a bit of a pickle, to say the least, because he called for Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, to resign before he'd even been offered a fixed penalty notice, just for attending this so-called party. Well, he's clearly done the same now. That's irrefutable, isn't it?
Well, he has. And actually, I thought you nailed it, Mercy. He called for, in fact, the Cabinet to get together and remove Boris Johnson simply on the basis that he was being investigated by the police. By that logic, the shadow cabinet now should be removing Keir and telling him it's time to go. In fact, I suspect they should be doing that, actually, because this whole thing is now dragging Labour down, possibly even worse than the Tories. Given the moral
will this go down as one of the greatest political suicides ever? I mean, he's brought all of this on himself, hasn't he?
Well, in the words of a shadow cabinet member, he's been banging on about it for 2 months, to the exclusion of everything else. You know, he's been ignoring the cost of living crisis. He kind of only skirted over the war. It's it's an embarrassment on a scale I've never seen before, frankly.
Yeah, but you know, for balance, I mean, look, everybody, it seems, everybody in Downing Street and in Westminster was involved in something. The rules were blurry, basically. You know, there were grey areas, and to be fair, they probably didn't realise that they were breaking the rules. Is it helpful to the political discourse, especially in the backdrop of a cost of living crisis, to keep this story dragging on, whether it's about Boris Johnson and the cake, whether it's about Keir Starmer and the beer? We have a cost of living crisis. Let's get on with the real problems.
Well, I always thought the rules were ridiculous anyway. They were vastly over the top and draconian, and inevitably were going to catch people out. And I never believed that Keir or Boris or Rishi should be sacked or resigned because of a fine itself. I mean, it's the equivalent of a parking ticket, for crying out loud, you know. I mean, even though Keir said that the Prime Minister is, I quote, a criminal for getting one. You know, but in Keir Starmer's case, it's a sheer hypocrisy of it. And the standards he set himself. I mean, you know, you cannot for 2 months go on and on and on about criminal activity, as I say, and telling people they have to resign and then say, oh, well, I've got one, it's all right, let's move on. I mean, this is the problem he's got. If he had just sort of, you know, made the attack on the terrible misjudgment that Downing Street made, that would have been fine.
Well, he lied about the curry, so I suppose you could say he's been backed into a corner here, hasn't he, a bit, really? What? Come on, I'm here all week. Anyway, right. No, but seriously, it's the lying. Now, we as it stands, from what we know so far, right, it's very difficult to prove, although we all have our suspicions, of course, very difficult to prove that Boris Johnson knowingly lied, right, because it's a difficult thing to be inside someone's head. Whereas with Sir Keir, I find it very, very hard to believe that he doesn't have any recollection of this evening whatsoever. He or his team weren't aware that Angela Rayner was there, and they weren't aware of this memo. And actually, he's a liar, isn't he?
This is the key question in many ways, because the whole basis of calling for Boris to resign is to say that he misled Parliament over the parties. And it's quite clear that Keir and Labour and Angela Rayner as well, I mean, let's not forget that she should probably resign as well, have probably misled Parliament over the party in Durham. And, you know, we need to get to the bottom of it, but I mean, it seems pretty clear, as you say.
Well, look, thank you very, very much, David. Great to have you on the show. We don't get you on often enough, actually. We need to rectify that.
It'd be great to come back on, guys. It's always a pleasure.
Good stuff, David. All right. David Maddox there, political editor of The Express Online.
You're not pulling your punches this morning.
I'm up for it today, actually. I'm up for it. Slept well over the weekend for once, so quite nice. But yeah, no, I think it's interesting, really, isn't it? Because you don't obviously want to go on about these lazy kind of curry puns or anything like that. But you know, I suppose it's interesting, isn't it? You see that document that's come out, and I mean, just take a look at that.
Oh
you know?
my God, I think somebody needs a break.
Okay, all right. Well,
the viewers need a break from your dad jokes this morning. But before that, let's go to a couple of your views. Wow.
What? What's happened?
Somebody with very nice words to say about Diane Abbott.
Good stuff.
Which is a rare one. Terry says Keir will not resign as he's adamant he hasn't broken any rules.
Yeah.
In contrast to Boris, who is very apologetic and sorry for his misdemeanour. Will Keir offer the same apology? To be fair, Boris was denying it for a while as well in the very beginning.
He was. No, he was, absolutely. I like this one. Well done, Terry. Be a Starmer. Keep these coming in, people. GBNews at gbnews.uk. Yes, it was a good one, that. And yes, and Roger has been in touch to say you reap what you sow. There we go. And he's also wishing Keir a good bye-bye.
Somebody here as well, Linda, who's joining your joke train.
Get in.
Morning, Patrick. Surely the next party has got to be not Partygate, not Currygate, but Eat Humble Pie Party.
Not your best. All right, OK, after the break, for the first time now, well done, cheers. For the first time in Northern Ireland's history, Nationalists hold the majority of seats in Stormont. Right, so what does this actually mean for peace in the region? We'll be back with more, but first, here's the weather.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking dry and bright for England and Wales, but sadly wet for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Let's take a look at the details. After a bright start this morning, cloud will begin to increase around lunchtime across the southwest. It will be dry though, with temperatures climbing into those high teens. Moving east, and they'll be hanging on to the sunshine across the southeast and East Anglia. It'll be feeling warm with just a small light breeze crossing the ground. Across into Wales and western parts, we'll see the winds increasingly freshen. There will still be some sunny spells on offer, particularly across the eastern areas. The Midlands will see sunny skies turn increasingly hazy as we move into the afternoon. Despite the increase in cloud, it will remain dry, with temperatures climbing into the high teens. Moving into northern England, and it will also be dry there, but the cloud will be in on the increase, especially in the west. Winds will also be strengthening here, especially over the Pennines. Up into Scotland, and it's a very different story here, with a band of wet and windy weather moving across the country. Feeling much cooler here too, much more than yesterday. The wet weather will also be affecting Northern Ireland this lunchtime, with the raining turning heavy at times. Combined with strengthening winds, it will also be feeling pretty miserable here. The rain will be slowly tracking back south-eastwards throughout the rest of Monday, although much of the south is staying dry until after dark. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everyone. It's 10:22. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Moroki on GB News. I tell you what, bang up for it for a Monday, actually. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, we are now. Last week's local elections, I'm sure you didn't miss those, saw some dramatic results, not least some of which were in Northern Ireland. Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Brandon Lewis, will hold talks today with the 5 major Stormont parties. Lewis conceded that the historic victory, which saw Sinn Féin become the largest party in the Assembly, was a significant moment for Northern Ireland.
Yes, indeed. Now, however, he did make it clear that his hope was still to form an executive as soon as possible. He's also expected to meet the Irish Foreign Minister Simon Coveney today, who has warned that restoring the executive in Northern Ireland could actually take months.
Yes, well, to help us get stuck in to these results and what exactly they mean for Northern Ireland and indeed the United Kingdom as a whole is Kevin Meager. Is that how I say your name, Kevin? Don't want to get it wrong, Kevin Meager.
It's Kevin Marr. Everybody gets
Marr. I knew it would be.
I'd have put money on Meager.
Something that I couldn't pronounce, but author, commentator, of course, and British and Irish politics and political commentator Dr. John Coulter.
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
I think so. It's not got like a silent D in it.
I think I'll stick to first names for now, if you both don't mind. Thank you for joining us this morning. Let's start with you, Kevin. What is Kevin has...
This is all going rather well.
Yes.
No, OK, we'll start...
Let's go to John, if we could. Dr. John, who's a political commentator and an expert on British and Irish politics. There he is. Right, John. Right, let's start again. So, can you explain to us the significance of these results? Because as we mentioned a minute ago, it's the first time Sinn Féin have essentially won the election. Of course, it doesn't work the same way as it does here in mainland UK. But what is the significance, if you could explain?
I think it's really the symbolism of the Sinn Féin victory. I mean, we've just celebrated the centenary of Northern Ireland, and we're about to celebrate the Jubilee of Her Majesty. And what do we have as the leading party in our parliament here in Northern Ireland? Sinn Féin, which for decades was the mouthpiece of the provisional IRA, a party that can't even use the name Northern Ireland. Such is its dislike of the state here. So basically, we're in a situation here, really, I would say that Brandon Lewis hasn't a snowball's chance in the flames of hell of getting a Northern Ireland executive up and running by this week, because the Democratic Unionist Party, who finished runner-up with 25 seats in the Assembly, has basically said it's the protocol or the executive. So what really Brandon Lewis, if he is serious about getting devolved administration back up and running here, and especially executive, he's got to get the protocol addressed. And he's only got about 24 hours because it's the Queen's speech tomorrow.
OK, all right, Kevin, I'm just going to lob it over to you now. I think some people are very concerned about this vote, to be honest with you, what it might mean at the border. Obviously, Sinn Féin's passed. We all are very well aware of all of that. Is there any potential danger around the corner, do you think?
I don't think so. I think we're out of that phase, and I think this result seismic. I mean, Northern Ireland, of course, was created as a corrupt unionist fief 101 years ago and governed as one for 50 years, which gave us the Troubles. And of course, we had 30 years of that, and we've had 20 years of stop-start political progress ever since. And over that period, over the last 20 years, 23 years since the signing of the Good Friday Agreement, Sinn Féin has been inching forwards electorally. This is now their strategy. Their strategy is to buy into politics absolutely wholesale, make a full commitment to it, and go through the institutions. Now, that's what they've done for 23 years, and it was very close in 2017. Sinn Féin was only 1,100 votes behind the DUP then. So I think there's been a lot of sense that this moment was going to culminate with Sinn Féin topping the poll, and of course they did that with quite a margin, 29% of the vote to the DUP's 21% of the vote. So it's seismic, it's significant, it's, as John says, it is hugely symbolic. Of course, the office of First Minister is a joint office with the Deputy First Minister. So in a sense, you can't just take control of the thing and run away with it. This is not like winning a British general election, as John says quite reasonably. So really, the question is for unionists to say, do you respect not only the result of the election, but do you respect the institutions of the Good Friday Agreement? And what we're getting back at the moment is, no, we don't support them and we don't respect them. Now, that represents, I don't think, an existential crisis, but it does represent a significant bump in the road. Now, if you go back 2 years, Jeffrey Donaldson's position on the Northern Ireland Protocol made a lot of sense. Jeffrey Donaldson was talking about making the best of the protocol and explicitly said there was no constitutional importance to it. If that Jeffrey Donaldson had have stayed on message over the course of the last few months, he may well have won this election. So I think they'll have to ponder on that.
John, let's throw this back to you. You alluded to the fact that a deal will not be reached. He will not be able to set up and running executive in the next week, let alone maybe even months. What do you think is going to happen to the United Kingdom as a whole? What is the future of the United Kingdom? Because, we've had commentators coming and speaking over the weekend, reflecting on these results and saying what we're witnessing actually could be the beginning of the breakup of the United Kingdom. What would you say to that?
Well, I don't think there's really any possibility of the immediate breakup of the United Kingdom, because the hard reality is the south of Ireland cannot afford Northern Ireland. Financially, economically, and even a bunch of hardline loyalists who would probably do to the Irish Republic what they did in 1974, which is unfortunately to set off no warning bombs. But I think the real thing that we've got to look at here is the implication of the change in Sinn Féin's strategy. And Kevin alluded to it there. Basically, using my own words, they've changed from the Armalite and the ballot box to the lipstick and the ballot box, because Sinn Féin's real aim is to gain power in the Irish Republic. They see that as the way to Irish unity. Now, that can only be achieved if the Southern electors elect Sinn Féin either as a majority party in Leinster House in Dublin or as a coalition partner. So Sinn Féin really needs Stormont to work so as it can prove to the Southern electorate that it really is a responsible party of government and not the puppets of the provisional IRA.
Thank you, Kevin. I could see you shaking your head partway through that. Do you want to just come back to that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think on the affordability question, I mean, John needs to catch up a little bit, really. I mean, Southern Ireland is one of the fastest growing modern economies in the world with the second highest standard of living. So the idea that somehow that Southern Ireland can't afford the North is absolutely for the birds. Northern Ireland represents about 4% of the southern states' GDP. It's a pretty small percentage these days. So I mean, just as an aside, I mean, I think John's right. The Sinn Féin's got a twin-edged strategy to obviously advance in Dublin as well as Belfast, and of course wants to make sure that Belfast works. And the issue here is there's so many pressing day-to-day issues. The NHS in Northern Ireland is close to collapse. There's a third of all the entire population of Northern Ireland on an NHS waiting list. Never mind all the cost of living crisis coming as well. And I think for unionists, they're going to have to ponder on the electoral implications of this. If they are seen to hold up progress on addressing these very, very basic fundamental issues, then if there's a fresh set of elections in 6 months' time, which I think is their hope that they can perhaps have a return match, then they're going to have to pay. They will pay the price, I think, from a lot of very angry electors who've seen them sat on the subs bench and refused to get on the pitch.
All right, well, look, both of you, I could actually listen to you go back and forth all day, but I'm afraid we're a bit out of time there. Kevin Marr, author and commentator on British and Irish politics, and political commentator Dr. John Coulter. Thank you both. We'll have to do it again very soon. This issue isn't going away at all, is it? So there we go. Right, well, look, loads of you have been getting in touch, and obviously I keep wanting to bang on a bit about Beergate, and some of you are absolutely... because obviously I had a curry as well, didn't he? People are getting a bit sick of my puns, aren't they? I mean, you could say you're having none of it.
Oh, my gosh. Did you write these? Did you come prepared with these?
No, it's just genius. It's just off the top of the head. Yeah, it's just there. It's in me. I've got it, you know. Yeah. Anyway, right, keep those views coming in. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Lots of you, all joking aside, have actually been getting in touch. People saying that basically Keir Starmer needs to be held to account. But here we go. Marilyn says, it's ridiculous for anyone to have to resign over a so-called Partygate, but unfortunately for Keir Starmer, he kept up the stupid pressure over these gatherings, and that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's come back to bite him, isn't it, really? We'll see what happens with it. I mean, I'm sure something will happen over the next couple of weeks. Who knows how long the police will take to conclude their investigation, but we'll bring you all the updates as and when the story develops. But for now, after the break, residents of a small village outside of York are pushing back against Home Office plans to house 1,500 asylum seekers in the area's disused RAF base. But before that, a look at this morning's news with Rosie.
A very good morning to you. It's 10:32. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Russia's president claims the West was preparing to invade his land, and that's why he chose to invade Ukraine. Vladimir Putin made the comments as Moscow is holding its annual military parade today to celebrate victory in World War II. Speaking this morning, the UK's Defence Secretary Ben Wallace says the Kremlin's trying to intimidate other countries during its celebrations today.
Putin, his inner circle and his generals are now mirroring fascism and tyranny of 77 years ago, repeating the errors of the last century's totalitarian regimes. They are showing the same disregard for human lives, national sovereignty and the rules-based international system.
Labour's Shadow Health Secretary says Sir Keir Starmer is not ducking scrutiny by pulling out an event later today. Wes Streeting defended the Labour leader against what he described as Tory mudslinging. Durham police are investigating allegations that Sir Keir broke COVID rules in April of last year. Labour have denied any rules were broken and have not said why Sir Keir's pulled out of today's speech. The Northern Ireland Secretary, Brandon Lewis, will meet party leaders at Stormont later today to press for the return of devolved government. It follows Sinn Féin's historic result in the Assembly elections, which saw them secure 27 seats and the DUP win 25. The Prime Minister says Britain's town centres will be given a new lease of life, with derelict shopfronts being transformed. The idea is to help restore neighbourhood pride. The plans will be announced in the Queen's speech during the state opening of Parliament tomorrow. The Prime Minister says the plans will give councils extra powers to force landlords to rent out empty shops. You're up to date on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio. Now let's head back to the point.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, it's 10:36 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Right now, residents in the sleepy village of Linton-on-Ouse, which sits around 8 miles northwest of York, have taken up a political fight against new plans for an asylum seeker processing centre in their area.
Yes, 150 letters have been sent to number 10 Downing Street as the locals. There are just 700 registered voters in the village. Fear amenities will not be able to cope with Home Office plans to relocate 1,500 asylum seekers, but that's going to be to a disused RAF base in the area.
Right, well, a Home Office spokesperson said the asylum... It's nice the Home Office actually commented on this one, because when I was trying to get them to comment about the one in Maidenhead, they were absolutely silent, but here we go. The Asylum Reception Centre at Linton-on-Ouse, North Yorkshire, will help end our reliance on expensive hotels, which are costing the taxpayer £4.7 million a day. We are consulting with local stakeholders about the use of the sites. The Home Office went on to say the new plan for immigration will fix this broken asylum system, allowing us to support those in genuine need while preventing abuse of the system and deterring illegal entry to the UK.
Yes, well, we're joined now by Claire Purcell, former Special Advisor to the Minister of Immigration and Conservative councillor as well for Ash and New Ash Green, and Councillor Darryl Smalley, Liberal Democrat councillor for City of York Council, while they'll be housing these migrants. Welcome both to the programme. Let's start with you, Darryl. What do you make of this plan? Because as we mentioned there, you know, the government is spending £5 million roughly a day setting up asylum seekers in hotels. Surely we need to look at alternatives, and this could be a good alternative.
I think, putting aside, I guess, the moral issue in terms of how the country treats those who seek asylum here, it's a completely crackers plan. I think we housed an initial accommodation centre in a hotel in York during lockdown for about just over a year, and saw absolutely that point that it was just about a mile out of York, but still those men housed there made that journey, walked often into York to visit, for example, a large Tesco's and other stores, because there just weren't those services in that area. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen here. It's a very small community, and I guess I know it well. And I think it's completely inappropriate. And also, I guess it's just another sign that the government is making a complete industry out of misery. You know, it's a very, very expensive solution. And if the government seems to want to devolve asylum seekers across the country, then I guess the suggestion from us would be give it to councils. You know, I think hopefully the guest on today can see, you know, councils do great work. They know their community as well. And I think if you are going to put and disperse people right across the country, then it's councils that know their areas best, know the solutions that might work, and they should have a greater say. You know, we found it immensely frustrating having to deal with the Home Office and the contractors when we had a hotel here in York.
Can I just quickly ask, before we go to you, Claire, can I ask you, Darryl, what do residents think? What are they saying about all of this? Because ultimately it is the residents of the local area who have no choice over the matter, really, but they'll be the ones faced with this sort of on a day-to-day basis.
I bet the house prices have gone down, haven't they?
Well, quite possibly. I think definitely residents are exasperated. You know, however they vote, this is North Yorkshire is a true blue county. Absolute desperation and a complete shock that there was no consultation. It came up completely out of the blue. Not only did they pull RAF jobs out of the area by closing Linton-on-Ouse, they're now turning it into that's a farm of misery. Really, it's beggars belief.
Great stuff there so far. Claire, I'll just lob it over to you now. Claire Pearsall, their former special advisor to the Minister of Immigration. I'm not sure exactly whether or not this would have fallen under your remit, but if it did, and this plan was presented to you by the former Minister of Immigration, what would you say?
It would definitely have fallen under my remit, and I think the answer would have been it is inappropriate for the setting that it is going into. And we've seen this previously with the Home Office at the back end of last year with, as you say, with Maidenhead, but there was also a site in Hampshire, which was a similar demographic to Linton or News. It was a small community in the countryside with only a couple of buses a day, right next to the very busy A303. So there was nothing to do. There was one shop, and it just wasn't sustainable. There were problems with water. There was no running water on site. So you have to look at all of these aspects of it, and to pretty much triple or quadruple the size of a village without adding extra infrastructure is never going to work. And the one important thing that I would always stress is that you must consult local authorities. As Daryl said, they are best placed to look at their communities and see where they can help, and they will help where they can.
Yeah, it's the total lack of consultation. I think Daryl alluded to it, but it happened in Maidenhead, which was down the road from where I was living. They did it with a Holiday Inn. The local council, by the way, it's in the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead. You've got Theresa May, former Prime Minister and Home Secretary, who's the sitting MP there, and a Tory council. And they weren't consulted at all. No one told them. They almost got a press release from the Home Office. Residents weren't consulted. And I'm concerned now, Daryl, that this could serve to whip up tensions, right? Because I can imagine, I'm certainly not condoning any tensions whatsoever, don't get me wrong, but I can imagine that locals would be a bit miffed, and all of a sudden, if there starts to be crime, or if there starts to be something like that that can be linked to the influx of these people, it's going to kick off, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's entirely, regardless of the actual policy, the way it's been handled has been a complete disaster for the government. York is an incredible, and its hinterland is a really welcoming city. We saw that with the Syrian program, the Afghan relocation program, and now also the Ukrainian Homes for Ukraine scheme. York is a city of sanctuary. We're a council of sanctuary. We're really proud to do our bit in supporting those fleeing terror. This plan, not only completely inappropriate for its location, it's just also completely inhumane for those men and women that will be part of that programme. We've seen, especially in our city, that when you house people within the community, when you give them those links, when you build those community groups, when we put officers of the council and resource in to make sure that they have stuff to do, whether it's English classes, whether it's trying to make sure that we build bridges between them and their families back at where they've fled. And it's a completely, I've actually lost for words. I know that I knew I was going to come on this programme. You never know how it's just completely inappropriate. And no, I think we really do need the government to reconsider.
No, absolutely. And there's almost so much to get stuck into with this, you don't quite know where to start. Claire, I'll just throw it back to you now. Are they supposed to be in Rwanda?
Well, I think this is the real problem, is the Rwanda plan has only just received royal assent. There are going to be legal challenges to it. So I'm unsure as to whether anybody will be sent to Rwanda. But I think it's important to note that £1.2 million per day is spent on housing 12,000 Afghans. Now, these are people that we extracted from Afghanistan in August of last year. So why in the past 6 months have we not helped them to secure accommodation elsewhere, disperse them into other communities, to rented accommodation? They have the right to work because we got them out. So that 1.2 million out of the sort of nearly 5 could be dealt with if the government actually just got on with it and put these people in a place where they could work, they could rent and be part of communities. So I think there's an awful lot that's wrong. Yeah. I don't think the Rwanda plan is going to sort this at all, because there are so many other issues that you need to deal with first. You're talking about new arrivals that are meant for Rwanda, but what about the sort of 25,000 refugees and immigrants who are currently holed up in hotels? What are we doing with those?
Sure. Thank you, Claire. And Daryl, let me just finish with you. Obviously, you're a Liberal Democrat councillor. The Conservatives didn't do too well in the local elections just gone. Labour and Lib Dems did, and other parties. We know what the Conservatives' policy is on illegal migration. We kind of, sort of know where Labour stand on that. Where do the Lib Dems stand?
I think we stand for an open and compassionate country, and I think we should.
So just
And Britain
open
has
borders.
already-
Open borders. Is that what?
Not what I said. We need to do our bit. This country has a fantastic and really proud history, whether you go back to World War II or most recently with Afghan, Syrian and now Ukrainian refugees. And we need to lead from the front, really. You know, we have a duty. There's
I get that.
war going to Europe and in Europe, and we need to do our bit. And I think housing in the community, and this is where actually we probably agree, that if you put those community infrastructure in, then councils up and down the country are willing and ready to step in of all colours.
This is what I want, just very quickly, sorry, Dal, because it's a good answer, don't get me wrong, we're going to have to move on a second. I am getting shouted at a little bit. But just quickly, I came into possession of a letter from the Home Office that I believe was sent to the leader of every single local council, it's a good couple of weeks ago now, that basically said they're going to start using your local housing stock to house some of these people. I don't believe are you flushed with housing stock? What about people who've already been on a waiting list in that area, or some vulnerable people who are already here, for example? Well, I mean, how are you going to do it?
It's entirely inappropriate, and I think even refugee and asylum charities, so this is people outside of government, recognise that housing in the private sector is almost always better than housing in the social rented sector. It only serves to inflame communities when you house in the council stock. We don't have enough in York, we don't have enough across the country, and so making sure that we have that quality private housing for those individuals is really key.
Good stuff, both of you. Thank you. Enjoyed that.
Thank you, Daryl Clare. We'll have to get you back again. Never thought I'd meet a sensible Lib Dem, I have to say.
Stop it.
Only
That's
joking.
mean.
Only joking. Thank you both for coming on and speaking to us about that. I enjoyed that discussion.
Yeah, cracking
Very
on that.
civil, common sense discussion, I think.
Yeah, but it's interesting now, isn't it? But just before we move on, how all of a sudden, when you're confronted with the realities, right, of our mass immigration, I dare say that a lot of Liberal Democrats would be the ones on the shore in Dover, waving the EU flag at these people and the rainbow flag and all of that. Oh, hang on a minute, they're coming to our area. Well, we can't have that. No.
I still don't get the Lib Dem policy either.
Well, I don't think there is one.
Yeah,
just let them in.
That's probably why.
Open the door.
That's probably why. Well, last week we spoke to a young man called Nathan who has embarked on a pretty remarkable trip. He's walking barefoot, yes, barefoot, from John O'Groats to Land's End. He's raising money for the mental health charity Mind after he himself struggled with his own mental health and well-being. And he sent us this video from the road.
As you can see, castle behind me. And it's been actually quite a nice day. Yeah, it was a bit started off with rain as per usual, but it's been quite sunny for most of the day. I've met some good people today. I've met two cyclists who are doing the 500. They were nice guys. I had a full English breakfast at a cafe, living my best life.
Lovely stuff. Speaking about the barefooted aspect of his walk, he told us it wasn't all bad depending on the surface.
So this is the most ideal ground I've come across so far. I think this is on the NZ 500 route, just like a small backcountry lane. It's like a tarmac road, but pretty smooth. And then there's grass, a lovely grass verge either side, with farmland to my left. And the beach and the sea to my right, so there's plenty of places to camp here as well. So yeah, this has been the best stretch of ground, to be fair, because even though it's obviously harsher on the feet, it's cleaner and you can see where you're stepping. So yeah.
Right, what an absolute hero. I mean, goodness gracious me, this is incredible stuff. And we've also got a Just Giving page. He's got his own Just Giving page, which is justgiving.com/fundraising/walk a mile in my shoes 22. We also have another one that we're going to add to, and obviously we'll give everything that we make to Nathan's charity, and that is justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christie's. I am going to be, well, hopefully anyway, losing I've got about a stone to go, just under a stone in weight, and then performing live on stage.
Because you are doing this challenge, you promised a few weeks ago to raise money, and if you lose the 1.5 stone, then then he's going to do a strip tease.
Well, I'm going to perform on stage with the Dream Boys. Yes, absolutely. Now you can donate to that. We're over £7,000 at the minute. We want to get to 10 grand by the end of the week. But let's go to Nathan. Nathan joins us now. Nathan, how are you, my good man?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are the feet?
Yeah, they're a bit sore, but I got to the end of my first trail and got to spend the night in a hotel last night, so I've had a nice relaxing evening and I'm ready to get going again.
Good stuff.
So how many miles have you walked so far?
I think it's about 150 so far.
Wow. And how many have you got left to go?
Don't depress him.
I've got 1,200 and something.
Wow.
Oh, mate, it's gonna be a real effort this for you. Do you get some funny looks when you're walking around barefoot?
You know what? Actually, I haven't, because it's been so remote. I've not really seen many people. But as I get close to towns and city centres, I get the odd look. But generally, people ask me, and I get to have a conversation with them and tell them, what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So it's a nice way to engage with people. Or they just look at me dead funnily and then walk off. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, just for our listeners and viewers, in fact, I know that we've spoken to you several times now, but if anyone is new to this, just remind them why you're doing this, what the whole purpose of it is for you.
Yeah, I'm doing this to raise awareness for mental health issues in the UK. I've struggled myself a lot. That led to an incident for me which made me have to get help. And I want people to realise that it's getting help is can be easy. I know it seems hard at the time, but all you've got to do is speak out. So these charities like Mind UK and other mental health charities are a really vital tool in doing that. The NHS is very stretched. It takes a long time. I got told myself 15 weeks before I could speak to anyone. So, there needs to be an option for people who need help on that day, the next day, and these charities are the people that are doing that. So I'm just wanting to raise awareness and raise funds for the charity that I've chosen to hopefully help others and sort of inspire them through what I'm doing to reach out and get help.
Yeah, absolutely. And just remind us how old you are. And by the way, we're all backing you here, and I'm sure everybody watching and listening is right behind you, and you've done a great job so far. And yes, 1,000+ miles does sound like a lot, but I'm sure you'll get there. How old are you again? Because this is going to be really inspiring as well for lots of young people going through mental health issues.
Yeah, I'm 28 years of age, so I started struggling. I've struggled all my life really with it, but I really started struggling over the past couple of years, and then the last year was really the tipping point. So I'm kind of glad that I've experienced what I've experienced and been through what I've been through, because it's led me to be here. So there's always, no matter how much bad there is, the good will always outweigh the bad. So.
Well, look, mate, you're an absolute inspiration, and you keep taking time out of your walk to talk to us as well. I hope we're not holding you up too much, but look, just keep going. We are with you, and we had a quick chat yesterday or the day before. I can't remember now. Yesterday, I think it was, wasn't it, mate? And we will sort out a leg of the trip where I can come and walk barefoot as well. And
I might even join you. I'm
there you go.
barefoot now under this desk. I'm getting some practice in.
There you are. Yes, good stuff. All right, mate. Well, look, keep going, and I'm sure a lot of people will be watching this now, and if anyone is watching this struggling with their mental health, obviously, there's a bit of inspiration here for you, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And thank you very much, Nathan. Good luck to you, my good man. We'll speak to you very soon. Okay,
thanks.
Keep going.
Speak to you soon. Bye.
So, cheers, mate. So,
you're so positive as well.
What a guy! What a guy! So, look, just quickly before we run out of time, I am obviously raising a bit of money for Nathan there, and if you could donate, it would mean the absolute world. Okay, we've raised over 7,000. Well, actually, that's an old. That's an old picture.
We're up to. We've raised over £7,300 so far.
7,300 quid so far, and it's justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christie's. And look, I know times are tough. The cost of living crisis, all of that stuff. But if you've just got a couple of quid, please, please, please chuck it that way, and let's save some lives together, OK? Because mental health really is no joke. Justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christie's. Let's try and get to 10 grand by the end of the week, OK?
And in fact, as a motivator, the person who donates the most gets to go on a date with Patrick.
Right, well, don't put them off. But anyway, if you still want to, justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christie's. How many times do I have to say it? Come on, get giving, people, please. Thank you very much. We'll keep all your thoughts coming in over email as well. But we're off. We'll be back in a tick.
Hello again and welcome to the latest from the Met Office. I'm Aidan McGivern. Warm sunshine once again in the southeast, but generally cloudier skies elsewhere, and outbreaks of rain are now pushing into the northwest, western Scotland, Northern Ireland, seeing those rain outbreaks push through during the rest of Monday. Eventually these fronts will slip south across the country, but for the time being, high pressure clinging close to the southeast, and so plenty of sunshine here, although some high cloud will filter in, turning the sunshine hazier, and the clouds are already thickening across northern and western England, Wales, with Scotland and Northern Ireland turning increasingly wet through the day. Some heavy rain in particular over the Western Isles and the West Highlands. Not feeling very pleasant, 13 to 15 Celsius here, but we could see 22 or 23 degrees in the southeast ahead of the rain. The rain toppling south through the evening, pushing into northern England, Wales, eventually the Midlands. Although it is weakening, it's fragmenting. Showers follow the rain for Scotland and for Northern Ireland, but with some clear spells as well. A blustery breeze, lows of 8 or 9 Celsius in Scotland, 10 for Belfast, 13 to 15 Celsius for much of England and Wales. A lot of cloud, though, as we start off Tuesday. Outbreaks of rain, mostly light and mostly clearing through after about an hour or two. And then skies brighten behind the rain with plenty of sunny spells once again across much of the UK. But there will be some showers, mostly affecting northern areas, especially Scotland and Northern Ireland, where those showers will be heavy, perhaps with the odd rumble of thunder and a gusty breeze as well. It will feel cooler, 13 to 16 in the north, 20 Celsius in London. And as we head into Tuesday evening, the showers tend to continue with some longer spells of rain possible for northern and western Scotland, Northern Ireland as well. Clear spells further south. Further showers to come on Wednesday, perhaps some longer spells of rain in places, drying up Thursday and Friday.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Muroki on your TV, radio and online. Here with you all the way through until midday. Where did that first hour go?
I know, it goes quick when you're having fun, doesn't it? But we're going to be speaking about benefits. The cost of living will be on the top of the agenda as well on this hour. And we're joined in the studio, actually, by one of the architects of the universal credit system.
Yes, and should voting be compulsory? Look at that turnout for the local elections. It was absolutely shocking, wasn't it? But we'll be looking into that very shortly. Got some serious concerns as well, get this, about the waistline of British children.
And British adults. Make sure you get in touch with your views. We'll get to those very shortly, but first, the latest headlines.
Gonna eat it.
Good morning, it's 11 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date. Russia's president claims the West was preparing to invade his land, and that's why he chose to invade Ukraine. Vladimir Putin made the comments as Moscow is holding its annual military parade today to celebrate victory in World War II. Speaking this morning, the UK's Defence Secretary Ben Wallace says Putin's actions in Ukraine are mirroring that of the Nazis.
Putin, his inner circle and his generals are now mirroring fascism and tyranny of 77 years ago, repeating the errors of the last century's totalitarian regimes. They are showing the same disregard for human lives, national sovereignty and the rules-based international system.
In an address, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine will do everything to end the war.
On the day of victory over Nazism, we are fighting for a new victory. The road to it is difficult, but we have no doubt that we will win. There are no shackles that can bind our free spirit. There is no occupier who can take root in our free land. There is no invader who can rule over our free people. Sooner or later, we win.
The Northern Ireland Secretary Brandon Lewis will meet party leaders at Stormont later today to press for the return of devolved government. It follows Sinn Féin's historic result in the Assembly elections at the end of last week, which saw them secure 27 seats and the DUP win 25. The DUP has insisted it will not form a power-sharing executive until issues with the Northern Ireland Protocol are resolved. Labour's Shadow Health Secretary says Sir Keir Starmer is not ducking scrutiny by pulling out an event later today. Wes Streeting defended the Labour leader against what he described as Tory mudslinging. It says Durham police are investigating allegations that Sir Keir Starmer broke COVID rules in April of last year. Labour have denied that any rules were broken and have not said why he's pulled out of the speech. University's Minister Michelle Donnellan told GB News she thinks Sir Keir Starmer's actions are hypocritical.
What's coming up in my own constituency is a sense of disappointment with the sheer hypocrisy that has happened and come about in terms of Keir Starmer's approach, having known deep down that there was more to this curry evening than initially we thought. You know, it does smack of sheer hypocrisy, and I can understand why my constituents are very concerned about that.
Polling expert Sir John Curtis told GB News there's mounting pressure not only on Labour but on the Prime Minister over lockdown rules.
I mean, should it emerge that Sir Keir, in the judgment of the police, did break the rules and as a result he resigns, the pressure on the Prime Minister to resign, particularly if he were to receive another fine, would of course be very substantial. So in a sense, yes, this is for the time being put the pressure on the Labour Party and probably has caused Sir Keir not to make a speech today. But actually, this could still rebound on the government if actually the judgment of the police were to be adverse for Sir Keir.
The boss of Scottish Power says more needs to be done to lower energy bills ahead of winter as prices are predicted to go up again. Keith Anderson has urged the government to take action, adding that bills are due to rise by almost £1,000 for millions of households by next winter. Schools in England will be required to publish an attendance policy under new government plans. There'll also be compulsory registers for children who aren't in classrooms, so authorities can better identify children who are missing out on full-time education. The Prime Minister says the new legislation and reforming school funding will create a system that works for every child. Britain's town centres are going to be given, supposedly, a new lease of life, with derelict shop fronts being transformed. The idea from the Prime Minister is to help restore neighbourhood pride. The plans are going to be announced in the Queen's speech during the state opening of Parliament tomorrow. Boris Johnson says the plans will give councils extra powers to force landlords to rent out empty shops. You're up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Good morning, it's 11:05 and this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's on your TV, radio and online. We're here for another hour until midday, so here's what's coming up.
Right, 2.6 million people on legacy benefits will soon be told to apply for universal credit instead, as the government pushes forward with its switchover plan. Will you be affected, and are you worried about it? Let us know, and we'll be talking to one of the architects of universal credit very soon.
Yes, and the Taliban is making all Afghani women wear the full veil burqa. Nobody's surprised at this, I would have thought, after already stripping women of their rights to secondary education and some paid work. What could possibly be next for Afghanistan's 14.2 million women, and what is the world actually doing about it? We did, of course, abandon them pretty much, didn't we? So we'll discuss that very shortly.
Yes, pretty predictable, that wasn't it, unfortunately. But finally, after such a low turnout for local elections, we debate whether compulsory voting will help hold our politicians more to account and, of course, increase the public's representation in Parliament, or would it all just be a massive hassle and we can't be bothered? We'll find out.
Yes, that's all coming up and much more as well across the programme. And get in touch with your views as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yeah, but first, Mercy gives her views on race in jury selections.
Now, there's a good chance that you, watching or listening to this, will one day be called to serve on a jury. About a 35% chance, in fact, if you live in England. It's something that never crosses our minds before it happens, but it is the pillar of our justice system. Sir William Blackstone, an 18th century English jurist and professor who produced the treatise on the common law of England, wrote this: "Trial by jury is a privilege of the highest and most beneficial nature, and our most important guardian of public and private liberties." And those words still ring true today. Jurors are selected at random completely in this country from the electoral register, just names plucked out of a hat. There's no bias, there's no discrimination. It's good old-fashioned luck of the draw for everybody registered to vote. Why am I telling you all this? Well, stick with me. Yesterday, Sunday Times reported that a black family who tragically lost their 14-year-old son when a gang of 5 stabbed him in the chest has called for an end to mostly white juries. This comes after only one of the 5 were found guilty of a lesser charge of manslaughter rather than murder. 4 of them went free. The family believe that because the jury was mostly white, justice had not been done. That was their words. Look, nobody should have to lose a child, of course. It's tragic, especially not in such a heinous way. And I do commend this family for bravely sitting through that trial and trying to get justice for their son. And I'm sorry that it didn't go their way. But I am afraid to say that I think their assertions on juries are ill-judged. A local reverend had this to say following the verdict, quote, "We need ethnically balanced juries. The system is not geared up to give black people justice." Well, let me put this candidly. I do not believe we have a racism problem in the jury system in Britain. America may be a different story, but I don't see evidence for racism in juries in this country. Because let me repeat, jurors are randomly selected from the electoral roll. And it's one hell of a slippery slope to start bringing in identity politics into that system, is it not? I mean, where does it stop? Women get to demand all-female juries. Trans people get to go on trial and demand trans jurors. God knows where it will end if we started fiddling with this centuries-old system. Now, let me use this as a case in point. Late last year, there was uproar when a nearly all-white jury with only one black member was seated in a Georgia murder trial of 3 white men who shot a black jogger. You may remember this. His name was Ahmaud Arbery. Well, This all-white jury already tells me the verdict of this trial. This is what one observer said on Twitter. Lots of people were saying this kind of thing. One other person said, is this all-white jury capable of convicting white vigilante murderers? So what was the outcome eventually? Well, black man jogging through white neighbourhood, 3 white men shoot him dead, nearly all white jury. Surely these white jurors, with all their racial biases, would set the killers free. But no, they did not. In fact, that white jury found all 3 white men guilty of felony murder, and they were handed down life sentences. And that's in America, for goodness sakes, the ground zero for racial chaos. So even I was sort of surprised when that verdict came out. And a big piece of research, anyway, by the Ministry of Justice finds that ethnic minority jurors are not underrepresented, and black and white citizens are equally willing to sit on juries. In other words, there is quite literally nothing to see here. Identity politics has already seeped into other once great institutions. Please, please, let it not corrupt what is an already shambolic justice system. Well, you're our resident lawyer. You studied law.
I did study law,
What do you think of juries?
It's a terrifying thought, that is. But,
what do you think of juries and this idea that somehow we should make them more representative of society?
Well, they are representative of society, because if it's all done by randomly off the electoral roll, then by definition it represents the exact demographics of this country.
Yeah, and I think the only way you could argue that is you could say, well, actually, some people don't register to be on the electoral roll, and which I would say, well, that's their fault, really, to be honest, not my problem. But if you're not registering to put yourself on the electoral roll, then of course you wouldn't be called to serve on a jury, and maybe there are differences, but I just think, please, let's not bring identity politics in something like this. I just think it's such a slippery slope.
The implication for me with that statement that's been made there about the juries is that all white people are racist. That seems to be the implication underlying that for me.
Yeah, I think for me the implication is that you can't empathise with somebody, or you can't think about what they've done fairly or pass judgment fairly at all if you happen to be a different colour from that person. And I think that is quite dangerous territory to go down, and it's a dangerous thing to enshrine into our justice system, I would have thought. So I think random jury selection should stay.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you actually look at what the jury did during the Edward Colston statue being torn down, right? So we can see that was, in my opinion anyway, just very obvious criminal damage. Whether you like the statue or not, or it'd be weird if you did, to be fair, but it got torn down and dragged into a river. If I did that with anything, if I did that with the camera that's in front of me now, I'd probably get done for criminal damage, right? And the jury decided that it wasn't. I wonder why that was. That, to me, is quite an obvious state of actually a jury maybe being scared of being called racist. I mean, it probably would have kicked off.
Yes, but I'd like to think that juries, by and large, they look at the evidence and they make a fair decision. I mean, we don't know what all the evidence was. Of course, I agree with you on that. But I don't think we should be fiddling with juries or the jury system at all. But anyway, let us know what you think. GBNews at GBViews at gbnews.uk. Right. But moving on to something that affects many people up and down the country. From today, some 2.6 million people on legacy benefits, so that's the old benefits, will be urged to move on to universal credit instead. This is as the government pushes forward with plans to move all claimants onto the universal credit by the end of 2024.
So for 1.4 million people, this will be a good move, as they will be better off, apparently, by about 220 quid a month, not to be sniffed at. But for around 900,000 people, it would mean even fewer pounds in their pocket. So winners and losers here. But charities warn that the enforced switchover could leave vulnerable people unable to pay their bills. So if it's going to affect you or someone you know, what can you do to get support? And we'll hopefully answer some of those questions right now.
Yes, because joining us is Devan Galani, one of the architects of Universal Credit and the Director of Policy in Practice, a think tank that helps people access the support they need. I believe your organisation runs a calculator as well, one of the big universities.
One of the benefit calculators on gov.uk, so if you just search for benefit calculators, that's one piece of advice I can give those of you listening.
Straight off the bat, I've got advice.
Let's just go back a second, and we mentioned that some people might be worse off if this goes ahead. Just give us an idea of who might be better, what kind of claimants would be better off if they were moved on to universal credit, and what claimants would be worse off.
OK, so with the big caveat that everyone's circumstances are unique, that's why the government's advising people to use benefit calculators and other tools and seek advice. Broadly, people in receipt of tax credits who have savings below 16,000 are more likely to be better off. People in receipt of disability benefits, there's much more complexity around their claims. So on the whole, they should definitely seek advice before, if they were to receive a migration notice. It's worth saying that before people who are going to be worse off are moved across, there is transitional protection if you're being made to move from legacy benefits onto universal credit. So if you are worse off, you get an additional amount to your universal credit payment to help mitigate that loss. I was just speaking to a couple of your colleagues in the lobby earlier who are kind of dealing with the situation as well directly. And I think the biggest thing for them is just the uncertainty.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think kind of looking into your circumstance, knowing that this isn't going to happen today. So it's rolling out today in Medway and Bolton, but it's not going to roll out, even in those areas, it's not going to roll out to everyone right away. So there is time to look into your circumstance and find out what steps you can take.
And should people, many people would have been on universal credit now for years and years, so it'd be what they're used to. They would have never been on the old legacy system. For people who are moving onto that system, should they be afraid of universal credit? Because it has had bad press in the past in terms of waiting times, in terms of problems with sanctions and things like that. What would be your assessment of what universal credit is like today?
I think it's improved considerably from those. I mean, it had a terrible press. It had partly because it had some serious flaws. I think a lot has been done to kind of mitigate those flaws. So if you move on to universal credit, particularly from legacy benefits, you get 2 weeks of additional run-on from your legacy benefits. So the 5-week wait is now much shorter because you're getting that additional support as you move across. You can access an interest-free advance loan if you are still struggling and need to make that gap less. There are a couple of other big challenges though. So if you are in receipt of tax credits and you have an overpayment due, it's much more likely when you move on to universal credit that the government will deduct that from your reward automatically, and that's affecting quite a few people. And a lot of charities out there, including ourselves, have said, particularly if they're old overpayments, you should probably just write those off and help make that transition to universal credit as simple as possible. One other bit of advice, again, through benefit calculators like ours and others, when you move on to universal credit, you can also be assessed for other types of support. So you can also access things like council tax reduction schemes, social tariffs from energy and water providers. You can do that now on legacy benefits too. But I think if you're particularly concerned about the move to universal credit and you're looking at these circumstances again, I'd highly recommend you look not just at what universal credit is going to do, but all of the other support out there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. How has, in your view, the lockdown and what we've just been through as a nation, but as a planet really, but affected the amount of people on universal credit, the amount of people needing this kind of support?
Yeah, it's gone through the roof. When the lockdown first happened, you saw a doubling of people on universal credit from 3 million to 6 million over the space of less than 2 months. So there's a lot more people on universal credit now, and therefore
it's almost a tenth of our population, isn't it? Or almost, I think. We've got about 66 million people in the
and in terms of working age, you're getting to about a third of the whole working age population will be on universal credit or benefits when everyone's migrated across. So 8 million households out of about 30 million. So it's going to affect a good proportion of the population, and that's another sort of bit of advice I'd give people if they're not sure, particularly if they're in work, if they're not sure whether or not they'll be eligible. Universal credit is now more generous than it was even just a year ago because the withdrawal rate got reduced, which means if you're in work, you're likely to get at higher earnings than you otherwise would have done. So if you're kind of on earnings of around, honestly, up to 50,000, but again, if you're on earnings below 30,000, you still might get a small top up to what you take home. And that's what it's there to do, because the cost of living is rising. It costs so much just to get by, particularly with a family. Universal credit's there to help people who need that additional support on top of their earnings to deal with that.
Good stuff. Look, thank you so much. Great to have you in the studio as well and get all of that expert advice. I really hope that people at home have managed to learn a bit of something from that and kind of really try to...
And just very finally, again, what's that website, Policy and Practice, the benefits calculator?
Yeah, or betteroffcalculator.co.uk. But if you just search benefit calculators, ours or others are out there.
OK, great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Take care.
Good stuff. All right. Well, look, after the break, we take a bit of a closer look at the Taliban's enforcement of the burqa for 14 million women. Sadly predictable, I think, and of course girls as well, actually, across Afghanistan. But now to the weather.
Hello again and welcome to the latest from the Met Office. I'm Aidan McGivern. Warm sunshine once again in the southeast, but generally cloudier skies elsewhere, and outbreaks of rain are now pushing into the northwest, Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, seeing those rain outbreaks push through during the rest of Monday. Eventually these fronts will slip south across the country. But for the time being, high pressure clinging close to the southeastern, so plenty of sunshine here, although some high cloud will filter in, turning the sunshine hazier. And the clouds are already thickening across northern and western England, Wales, with Scotland and Northern Ireland turning increasingly wet through the day. Some heavy rain in particular over the West Isles and the West Highlands. Not feeling very pleasant, 13 to 15 Celsius here. But we could see 22 or 23 degrees in the southeast ahead of the rain. The rain toppling south through the evening, pushing into northern England, Wales, eventually the Midlands. Although it is weakening, it's fragmenting. Showers follow the rain for Scotland and for Northern Ireland, but with some clear spells as well. A blustery breeze, lows of 8 or 9 Celsius in Scotland, 10 for Belfast, 13 to 15 Celsius for much of England and Wales. A lot of cloud, though, as we start off Tuesday. Outbreaks of rain, mostly light and mostly clearing through after about an hour or two. And then skies brighten behind the rain with plenty of sunny spells once again across much of the UK. But there will be some showers, mostly affecting northern areas, especially Scotland and Northern Ireland, where those showers will be heavy, perhaps with the odd rumble of thunder and a gusty breeze as well. It will feel cooler, 13 to 16 in the north, 20 Celsius in London. And as we head into Tuesday evening, the showers tend to continue with some longer spells of rain possible for northern and western Scotland, Northern Ireland as well. Clear spells further south. Further showers to come on Wednesday, perhaps some longer spells of rain in places, drying up Thursday and Friday.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christys, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Good morning, everyone. It's 11:24. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Moroki on GB News. Yes, you know it. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, now, a very important story this. It's been more than 8 months since the Taliban returned to power in Afghanistan following a military offensive and, of course, that pullout by US forces. Since then, women have been banned from secondary education and some areas of paid work.
Well, and now the Taliban has ordered all Afghan women to wear the full veil, the burqa, at all times. So the blue burqa was a global symbol, wasn't it, of the Taliban's previous regime, very oppressive regime, in the 1990s, with its introduction now announced by the Ministry for the Propagation of Virtue and the Prevention of Vice on Saturday. So obviously everything
it does sound Orwellian, really, doesn't it? You could get more Orwellian than that. This all-male ministry replaced the country's Ministry for Women in August 2021. Well, we're delighted to be joined now by Nargis Nahan, a former Afghan politician, former Minister of Mines and Petroleum as well. Thank you so much for joining us to speak about this. Many of us in the West will not be surprised at this news because despite the fact the Taliban said, actually, we're going to run the country in a reformed way, women will have more rights, people who know what the Taliban are like knew this would happen. Did you know?
Well, this was something that even during the peace process, we kept on reminding the international community and especially the US that we need to have a proper mechanism in place for accountability of the Taliban, because there is no guarantee the Taliban would implement what they're promising in Doha during the negotiation. Unfortunately, the peace process was rushed. And as a result of that, today we see that Taliban, first of all, took over Afghanistan in a manner that did not end up in a political settlement, and then lack of recognition from the international community, which freezing of the assets of Afghanistan. And as a result of that, we have massive starvation going on in the country. The girls are banned from the secondary school. And on top of that, this decree was something that we knew that it was going to come, either today or tomorrow. It just took them 8 months to come up with this decree. This was something that we all knew about it. And we kept on reminding the international community. But unfortunately, they didn't hear from us. And today, the Afghan women are paying the highest price for the lack of responsibility and irresponsible negotiation, peace deal and withdrawal of the international community.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, this is a very visible sign, you could say, of male oppression of women. I know some people would disagree and say that it's religious dress, etc. But yeah, I mean, realistically, do you think that most women in Afghanistan surely mustn't want to do this? They've had a taste of relative freedom, haven't they? And for it to be snatched away now, it must be even more galling for them.
Look, it's very difficult. You can live in a country which is poor. You can live in a country which is insecure. You can live in poverty as long as you have the hope that you can change the situation. You can change the situation of yourself, your life, and your country. What we are facing right now in Afghanistan is a situation of hopelessness and helplessness, where we know that the situation is deteriorating very rapidly. Our people are suffering. And we are starving. But then on top of that, we are also having this sense of helplessness that we can't do anything about it. And this is really difficult to live with. Afghanistan was an Islamic country before 15th August. Afghanistan, unlike Iran and Saudi Arabia, the previous administration did not have any formal policy about women observing a job. But still, all women around the country were observing a job all the time and were working. And we were an Islamic country. But then suddenly they are coming up with this decree, which is not putting only pressure on women, but also putting under question the moral and virtue of the families, that how they have raised women, that now the government is deciding for them. This will also have implication for the families in terms of domestic violence. Imagine in this situation, the decree that they have issued, a young brother of 8 years old can question his sister of maybe 20 or 30 years old and saying that, oh, you have not observed the job properly and I'm going to be held accountable on this. So I don't allow you to wear this or that or go here or do what. Same thing goes with the son, with the mothers. The sons can control their mothers based on this decree because they have held accountable the male members of the family, not the woman, if the woman are not observing the job that they have explained it.
OK, look, I'm just going to ask you this because we get a lot of emails in about this from members of the public, OK? So I just want to hear from you. You obviously know Afghanistan incredibly well and you know the population incredibly well, former minister, of course. Look, a lot of people that email in here say that potentially the local population could have done more to resist the Taliban. Is that true?
I mean, we need to put ourselves in the shoes of the local population and see what we would have done. A regime that is committing war crime, atrocity, a regime that's so brutal that even if the girls are going out on the streets just asking for their education right and freedom, they are put in prison, they're being detained and they're being tortured. How do you expect the people to organize themselves, the citizens, to have resistance against them? But look, despite all these fear that people are having from the Taliban, despite the experience that they have with the Taliban, but still so many girls are going out on the streets and they are raising their voice. Those of us who are in exile outside the country and those of us who are inside Afghanistan, we are constantly raising our voice. Even today, I'm sure you will come across many videos in the social media that the girls have begun to organize themselves again, raising their voice against the new decree. The problem that we have is that we don't see any ear listening to us inside the country and as well as in the international platform.
Well, Nargis, thank you so much for joining us and talking about this very depressing situation. And, you know, let's just hope, if it's not too much wishful thinking, that something changes and that the millions of young women who will be growing up in Afghanistan do have a bright future. Let's hope some of them will do. Nargis Nahan there, a former Afghan politician and former Minister of Mines and Petroleum. I'd like to say we all knew this was coming, really, because we weren't expecting the Taliban to necessarily give women rights and have this massive change of heart and have this massive change of ideological position. It was only inevitable, I would say.
Well, it's even more galling, isn't it? I mean, the idea there that, you know, the Taliban have promised us, they've promised us, which is more specifically Joe Biden actually than anything else, but they've promised us, you're going to treat women fairly. Well, you're obviously not. It was about 36 hours before there was video footage of women being flogged in rural Afghanistan. Now they've got to wear the burqa. They've been banned from education. I mean, this is just the Taliban. It's not Taliban 2.0. It's just exactly as they were before. And this is it. What did people expect when the Taliban took charge? We have seen the condemnation of Putin rather than the appeasement by the West. But it can't bring itself to condemn a medieval religious system. This is from Tony. I think that's sorry, Tony. But there you go. And I think it's interesting, isn't it? Really, it's all gone very quiet about Afghanistan, and I'm a bit annoyed about that.
I suppose we're dealing with another.
Well, there's a lot going on.
Lots happened. The pandemic was going on, and the cost of living is now going on. The war in Ukraine. So I think it has just fallen down on the agenda. But after the break, should voting be compulsory? Turnout in the local elections was small. So should we all be made to vote, to cast our vote? That's our big debate coming up after the break. But before that, here's the morning's news.
It's 11:33. Good morning. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Russia's president claims the West was preparing to invade his land, and that's why he chose to invade Ukraine. Vladimir Putin made the comments as Moscow is holding its annual military parade today to celebrate victory in the Second World War. Speaking this morning, the UK's Defence Secretary Ben Wallace says the Kremlin's trying to intimidate other countries during its celebrations today.
Putin, his inner circle and his generals are now mirroring fascism and tyranny of 77 years ago, repeating the errors of the last century's totalitarian regimes. They are showing the same disregard for human lives, national sovereignty and the rules-based international system.
Labour's Shadow Health Secretary says the Keir Starmer's not ducking scrutiny by pulling out an event later today. Wes Streeting defended the Labour leader against what he described as Tory mudslinging. Durham police are investigating allegations that Sir Keir broke COVID rules in April of last year. Labour have denied that any rules were broken and have not said why he pulled out of the speech. The Northern Ireland Secretary Brandon Lewis is meeting with party leaders at Stormont today to push for the return of devolved government. It follows Sinn Féin's historic result in the Assembly elections, which saw them secure 27 seats and the DUP win 25. The Prime Minister says Britain's town centres will be given a new lease of life, with derelict shopfronts being transformed. The idea is to help restore neighbourhood pride. The plans will be announced in the Queen's speech during the state opening of Parliament tomorrow. The Prime Minister says the plans will give councils extra power to force landlords to rent out empty shops. You're now up to date on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio. Shortly, we'll be back to the point.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, it's 11:37. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's and Mercy Moroki on GB News, live as ever on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, now, as we all know, there were votes happening, elections happening just a few days ago. And on Friday, millions headed to those elections, and turnout was Thursday, turnout was low. Well, across the country, roughly just 30% of us went out to cast that vote. But that number was higher in Northern Ireland, at 64% for the Stormont Assembly election. But is this enough? Because this morning we're asking whether or not voting should be made compulsory, following countries like Australia, Belgium and Brazil, where people are compelled to vote, otherwise they receive a fine.
I think I'd take the fine sometimes, to be fair. But anyway, joining us now is Paul Bickley, Head of Research at Theos, which is a religion and society think tank, and Alexander Cairns, CEO and founder of the Youth Vote UK. Right, Paul, I'll start with you then. Should voting be compulsory?
No, it shouldn't. The problem with compulsory voting is that it would paper over the cracks. People don't vote because they don't feel there's much at stake, and they feel their local authorities have been robbed of power and money. They're not stupid. They come out when it matters. They come out when there's something at stake and where they can make a difference with their vote. If you make a vote compulsory, you'd spend a lot of money pursuing people with fines and prosecutions. You wouldn't fix the underlying problem, which is people's sense of disengagement and apathy with the system that isn't working for them. Consistently, the places where turnout is lowest are places that are most deprived. There's no surprise that those who feel that they get least out of the system are least inclined to try and shape it.
Well, Alexander, let's just go to you. What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, so I disagree. I do think the voting should be mandatory. I think the problem that we have in this country is because it's not mandatory, both at local and general election, the percentage of people that are actually registered to vote is about 3/4 of the country. And therefore the turnout, say being a general election of 66%. That means the governing party of the day will get around a third of the country to vote for them. For me, that's not really a mandate to govern, but be at a local or general election level. Now, of course, you would never fix the system completely, but if you made it mandatory, what you would see is significant numbers of individuals, like we see in Singapore, Belgium, Australia, where the turnouts are normally around 95%, and that would give any local council or governing party a mandate to govern, in my perspective.
Paul, can I just throw something back to you? Because there's something that you said, which was marginalised communities, for example, they might be less likely to turn out and vote. Isn't that sort of the point? Because if you make them go out and vote, they might be able to go out and make their voice heard and actually vote for a candidate who might do better things for them and their community.
Well, firstly, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's very clear. So, for instance, if you look at London, the highest turnout will be in places like Richmond. The lowest turnout would be in places like Barking and Dagenham.
That's how Hamlet sometimes have a shockingly high turnout. But yes, carry on. People know, actually, and I think this is the point, that the system isn't delivering for them. They're therefore disinclined to engage. Now, you can say that they need to kind of step outside of that, but it's not their apathy that's the problem. It's more structural problems with the way that power is organised and the inequality of both resources and voice that mean that they just don't feel it will make a difference. And most of the time, that's probably true. It's not like going and casting a vote at a local election will make a large difference. Now, when people know that they do have an opportunity to affect change, they do go out and vote. So at general elections, of course, turnout is higher. You see it in Northern Ireland. There are elections for the Assembly there. People know that they have a stake in that. They know that they can have an influence, so they go and do it. Yeah. Okay.
But we shouldn't blame voters. They're not daft, and they know when there's very little chance of them making any difference.
Okay, all right, interesting stuff. Alexander, I'll just lob it back over to you. Obviously respond to anything that you want to from that, but just as a quick aside, would we not have to have voter ID then as well? Are you pro-voter ID if we make all voting compulsory? Otherwise, how do we know if everyone's voting?
Yeah, so I'm not necessarily pro-voter ID, and I'm absolutely not going to advocate for a system where we're checking every single person around the country. But
you have to show your ID when you want to get into Wetherspoons, though, don't you? So why shouldn't you show it when you want to cast a vote?
You should, but then there would be an issue about ethnic minorities not necessarily having the right identification to vote. So I'm not necessarily in favour of that. What I would say is back to the point about, the voters aren't daft and we see more people voting when they can make change. The reality is
they are daft if they can't get the right ID, aren't they?
Well, the point I was going to make is just at a general election level, the turnout is higher, but we're still seeing more people that don't vote than do vote. What you'll see if you make it mandatory is a significant portion of the country would vote, right? Whether it's a local or general election. People on polling day, when I was speaking to them, they forgot. They couldn't be bothered. I assure you, if they were mandated to vote, they would turn out to vote because they know how important it is. But things in their life just come up, and that's fine.
It would fix
living in a democracy means you take part in it.
Sorry, one sec, Paul. Let Alex finish, and we'll lob it back over to you. Go on. Sorry, carry on, Alexander.
I was just going to say that actually I think you'll find that the voters know that they can make a difference because there's lots of things at local election level that affect them and general election level that affect them. But they just forget. If you make it mandatory, they would remember, I assure you.
OK, go on, Paul.
Well, I just have real sympathy with the desire to kind of improve the system. And there's nothing wrong with trying to think broadly about how to do that. But merely compulsory voting, it would be an entirely cosmetic shift. It would make politicians feel a little bit more authenticated. They would feel like, the people are turning out now. But in fact, low voting is a barometer for the sense that people have about our democracy. If you just make people go out and vote, sure, they're going to vote. They're going to avoid a fine. That's just carrots and sticks type stuff. But it doesn't fix the underlying problems where people are, in a deeper way, disenfranchised and closed out from the system.
But Just very, very finally, would you be willing to go for a middle ground and say compulsory voting, but an option that's sort of none of the above?
Yeah, you could tick a box to say no thanks. Paul.
Yeah, in the systems that people run overseas, that's a possibility, yeah, I wouldn't want to. Yeah, there are good ideas everywhere, but this, I think, my main complaint is it doesn't actually address the deep problems. So I'm not saying that all is well, that our democracy is in a happy place, and that people are engaged in our politics. Of course, they're not. Yeah. I'm saying that the problems are deeper. That what you see on election day is a symptom of a deeper malaise, where people just don't see any way of kind of getting into the system. People need to take or to be encouraged to take more of an ownership of the things that are happening in their neighbourhoods and their nation, but merely forcing them into the voting booth is not going to fix the problem.
All right, we're a little bit pressed for time. Alexander, quickly, sorry, yeah, just your response to that. I suppose, would you be okay if people were forced to vote, as it were, you'd be all right with them spoiling their ballot, would you?
Well, no, I wouldn't be, but I think that would inevitably happen. But I think that the main point here is what we see is for young people, for example, a lot of young people don't vote, and politicians, therefore, when it comes to policies, don't push policies that are really going to impact them, because they know that they're not their kind of tactical target coming election. If you made it mandatory, you'd see policies that would impact all of society, because politicians couldn't shy away from saying, actually, we know pensioners vote, and we'll make sure that the manifestos are only targeted to them. That's why I think mandatory voting would work.
Look, really interesting stuff, guys. I must say, I've loved this. We're going to have to do it again at some point soon. Thank you so much. Really insightful discussion and debate, that, actually. So, Paul Bickley, the head of research at Theos, which is a religion and society think tank, and Alexander Cairns as well, CEO and founder of the Youth Vote UK. Right, you know what? No time to hang around here, people.
Yeah, let's go straight to the viewers.
Let's go straight to the viewer. That's right.
One particular viewer.
A fan favourite, this one. Backed by popular demand is GBNews viewer Zoe Holt, who was on last week, and you were an absolute sensation, so you're back on board. So look, I don't know if I'm hoping that you might have just heard that discussion, do you? In light of the local elections as well, what's your hot take this week, Zoe?
Sorry? Repeat.
What's your take on this week with politics and also with the elections and with compulsory voting?
Okay, compulsory voting, I think it's a fantastic idea. However, I mean, if people don't want to vote, they're going to just spoil the ballot papers. I was dying to talk about Beergate. I know it's completely boring, but I am so angry at the sheer arrogance of Keir and all the rest of the Labour Party, the way they have treated and now continuing to treat the general British public. I'm just fuming about it.
Look, absolutely. And Zoe, we've got a poll on this actually going on at the minute. We'll get the results for you very, very shortly. And I think you can probably still take part in that on GB News. Do you think if Keir is handed a fixed penalty notice, do you think he will go? Because he was telling Boris, he was telling Rishi Sunak, they've got to be off ski because they got a fixed penalty notice. Surely he's got to go, hasn't he?
I think he might go anyway. He's gone very quiet all of a sudden. And for me, this is the only way I think they can spin it. If he now resigns and says, I'm doing the decent thing, I'm doing the right thing, he's just going to put more pressure back on Boris. I think that's what he'll do next.
Are you fed up of all of this now, to be honest? Because I know there's been a further development and this has happened to Keir and now he's under investigation. But are you actually quite fed up? And what would you like us to be speaking about instead? Because lots of people say they're getting bored of it now.
Yeah, it's really boring. The only thing that I still wanted to talk about was because the media, the general media, mainstream media, have just picked and chosen and been part of this witch hunt campaign. But what I want to hear about on the news is what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in housing, what's going on with police stations that have all been closed. Let's get some police stations back open. The housing crisis, that's what I want to actually hear about.
I'm not surprised. What's the mood music like in Didsbury? Are people thinking that? Who do they prefer at the minute? Do you think Boris or Keir or what's going on in Didsbury? Didders.
Unfortunately for me, I don't know when the last time you were here, Patrick, was.
A couple of years ago.
Media lovey land. a lot of people who work at the BBC, Channel 4, you know, mainstream media, live in Didsbury, got lots of lovely types in Didsbury. It's fair to say I'm in the minority. You know, the sort of opinion that actually the Labour Party can do no wrong.
Yeah. And on that, you know, we were talking about Keir resigning, Boris resigning. You know, if stranger things have happened, both of them happen to resign. Yeah. Is there somebody on the front benches at the moment, or just somebody in both parties that you could see and think, you know what, I would actually vote for that person?
No, not at all. I just think it'd be the absolute worst thing for Boris to go, and I don't think he should have to. I think it's with Keir. It's the absolute his campaign of hoodwinking us all for 5 months, standing up there, berating Boris, lecturing us all on about how we should behave. But if Keir goes, I think they'll probably do that, so he'll fall on his sword. But who would
Rayner, perhaps?
Good grief.
Angela Rayner, what do you make of Angela Rayner?
I find her quite off-putting.
She's lied as well, hasn't she? She's lied as well.
Yeah, no, good stuff. No, sorry, so we're going to get going now. But thank you very, very much. And in a way, we've come full circle, right? Because we started there with a bit of a debate about whether or not people should be forced to vote, and I think it's pretty clear you're not particularly enamoured with. I suggest maybe anyone apart from Boris at the minute. So if he goes, then who do you vote for? Do you even bother? So look, Zoe, thank you very much. You're an absolute legend, and we'll get you back on very, very soon. And yes, hopefully I'll see you in Didsbury at some point for a pint sometime soon. Very hot there. GB News viewer, good stuff.
What did you call it? Diddums or something?
Didders. Yeah. There's the Didsbury dozen, which I think.
That?
Well, there's 12 pubs. So you figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
well, anyway, now let's take you through some of the other few stories and headlines that you may have missed. Rwandan-born Scottish actor Nkuti Gatwa has been announced as TV's new Doctor Who. When asked what he would bring to the role, the 29-year-old star, who's known for Sex Education, the series, joked fabulousness before saying that he hopes his casting will add another dimension to the already shaped needs.
Oh gosh, wow. Okay.
Excuse me.
Gosh.
The already shape-shifting and gender-bending Doctor.
I mean, he's a Time Lord. He's literally an alien. They are an alien. And so, like, they can regenerate into anything and anyone. And for me, I just find the show to be the most beautiful form of escapism. Like, you forget about all your worldly troubles and you get to go to space and battle aliens. And I feel like I don't know. I don't feel like anyone can kind of put themselves in those shoes. I certainly do. The Doctor is not from anywhere. It's like they don't fit in anywhere. And I think for marginalized people, they have been a real beacon of kind of feeling like seen in a way, or like they are someone that can help people escape.
Well, there we go. We've had a female Doctor as well, so it's a very progressive show, isn't it, Doctor Who?
Yeah, I do like the fact I was looking through the headlines when this story was being covered yesterday, and nobody was mentioning the race aspect or anything. And then as soon as lots of people on the left started tweeting about it, suddenly they were making it about his ethnicity.
Yeah,
and I just thought, actually, nobody else pretty much cares, to be honest.
I couldn't care less.
Yeah.
I've never even watched it. Yeah.
Never watched Doctor Who at all?
No, but given the way their ratings are going, neither has anyone else. But anyway, a Texan woman who bought a marble bust in a charity shop for $35 has found that it's actually an ancient Roman artefact. I love it when this kind of thing happens. Laura Young found the bust in August 2018 and took it to auction houses and museums to find out its history, right? So a specialist from Sotheby's discovered that the bust was last on display at King Ludwig I of Bavaria's replica Pompeii home in Germany, which is actually quite a difficult thing to say, and was lost at the end of World War II after being looted from storage.
Well, this statue is believed to be the 2,000-year-old bust of Sextus Pompey, a Roman military leader whose father was one of Julius Caesar's allies. So
this is great.
I wonder how much she got for it then.
Well, I imagine it'd be quite priceless.
I would suggest our radio viewers go and look at it, because it does look very impressive. It's the sort of thing that you would think isn't real because it looks too pristine.
Big marble bust.
To be 2,000 years old.
Yeah.
Well, another one. An American couple have decided to live aboard a cruise ship. Lucky for some, saying it makes more financial sense than a mortgage. Angeline and Richard, both in their 50s, crunched the numbers and realised they could either stay in Seattle paying for a mortgage, a brick and mortar home, or just quit their job, sell their house and hop on a cruise. Hop from ship to ship. For as little as £35 each day. And that price includes accommodation, food, beverages and transport.
It's not
a bad idea, is it?
It's not a bad shout at all.
Well, their trick is to use their loyalty membership cards, cruise sales and to keep frugal with just one suitcase each.
Goodness me, it seems they've got no regrets, apparently. Angeline says we don't plan to permanently live on land anytime in the future. So there we go. I think that's really interesting. You know what, why not?
Yeah.
You go and do what you want to do.
Fair enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I must say I've been put off cruises. I've never actually been on one, but I was put off it by COVID, right? Because when you see that, remember that Japanese cruise ship or the ship off the coast of Japan? If there's an outbreak...
Prison.
Yeah, if there's an outbreak on a cruise ship, you are knackered. Also, to a lesser extent, Titanic. Anyway, right, some views. So, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Oh, there's no time for views. There's no... OK, one view, all right, one view. Starmer should go. There we go, that's from Patricia. Good way to end the show. Thank you very much.
Yes, well, this Wednesday, we're once again handing over our show to you. We want you to tell us what you want us to talk about on the show, what you think are the most important stories. We've done it for a few weeks now, a couple of weeks, 3 weeks. I think it was such a success last week with so many of you getting in touch. So we're doing it again. Get in touch with us. Tell us what you want us to speak about, who you want us to speak to. The email is tothepoint@gbnews.uk. And that is it from us. We'll see you tomorrow.
We will.
Hello again and welcome to the latest from the Met Office. I'm Aidan McGivern. Warm sunshine once again in the southeast, but generally cloudier skies elsewhere, and outbreaks of rain are now pushing into the northwest, Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, seeing those rain outbreaks push through during the rest of Monday. Eventually these fronts will slip south across the country, but for the time being, high pressure clinging close to the southeast, and so plenty of sunshine here, although some high cloud will filter in, turning the sun